A wild and dangerous night in Fulton County.
The kidnapping victim's sons were receiving text messages demanding the ransom money.
They took a picture of me with my head covered up and I was bloody.
A $100,000 ransom.
Atlanta police got involved. They chased the suspect for less than a mile before they crashed this silver Ford SUV in the parking lot. The men scattered. One of them was shot by Atlanta police in the leg.
Hands up! Hands up!
The guy turned around, he had a gun drawn. I fired 2 shots.
Shot fired.
You end up staring down the barrel of
A gun. And discharging it at me.
So they shot at you?
Yeah. That's the only thing you hear, and it goes in slow motion.
The shot fired at Officer Larry Lobianco missed. The car window behind him shattered.
And Lobianco was chasing him on foot. I heard a gunshot.
You're fired upon, you return fire. A lot of young officers would have emptied their magazines.
Yeah, fired 1 shot.
Shot fired.
I saw that the perp was shot in the leg and he was bleeding heavily. It was in the thigh. It looked like it was right where the femoral artery would be because he was bleeding a lot, and Bianco took his radio off and he took his cord and he tied it and twisted it like a tourniquet above the wound and stopped the bleeding.
This man tried to kill you, didn't he?
Correct.
This man shot at you. You returned fire, and then you end up saving his life.
In my opinion, he saved that guy's life because he was bleeding a lot, and he stopped the bleeding with his radio.
Wow.
He did, in my opinion.
The cord?
Yeah.
Wow.
So in my opinion, I think he saved his life.
If you're shot in an artery, a tourniquet's not really going to do anything. You actually have to go in there and plug it. I plugged it with my thumb.
You stuck your finger into the man's thigh and held his femoral artery closed.
Correct.
Until EMTs arrived.
Yeah.
I had to pry his hands off of the radio that he took, his shoulder mic, to wrap the tourniquet.
Yeah, he
wouldn't let go because he was so freaked out.
Kidnapper Terenzio McCurdy was given life in prison.
Hey, is that her? Sarah, come on, go. Help me.
The kidnapping victim, Deborah Patrick, was given her freedom.
Our job is to prevent loss of life. I mean, that's what we took our oath for. You don't want to hurt anybody, but if you have to, you will.
Did you seek help after the shooting?
Definitely.
Therapy helped Lobianco thrive as an officer. The hero was promoted to an elite anti-gang unit and earned top reviews. But arguments with supervisors resulted in transfers, even while he was receiving praise for his composure directly from the chief of police. Lobianco's days in uniform were numbered shortly after he wrote this to his bosses. "I'm very disappointed with some of the officers in this zone, as well as some of the sergeants. It seems like when you try to do the right thing, you get shot down."
What was it like when they took your badge, took your gun, and said, "You're not an Atlanta police officer anymore"?
Literally the worst moment in my entire life.
Internal Atlanta police documents show Lobianco's lieutenant began building a file on him. Immediately after, Internal Affairs said there was a lack of documentation to relieve the officer of duty. Within days, the lieutenant accused Lobianco of sexually harassing his male sergeant, though the sergeant did not feel harassed, nor that there was any sexual intent behind his way of trying to connect. And there was an alleged hit list of people who betrayed Lobianco. But in the same sentence, the lieutenant wrote there was no evidence to support such a claim.
If you look at the reason why I was relieved of duty, I mean, it's saying I'm mentally incompetent.
This document had an outsized effect on Officer Lobianco. It ended his career with the Atlanta Police Department. This is the final report issued by the psychologist hired by the city. Because of Officer Lobianco's overt efforts at impression management, the evaluator was unable to obtain an accurate diagnosis. But was he the only police officer the city failed to diagnose? Officer Lobianco was ruled unfit in April, but 11 months before that, a female APD officer was ruled unfit because of her overt efforts at impression management. The evaluator was unable to obtain a diagnosis. And 4 months before that, another APD officer with overt efforts at impression management, and again, the evaluator unable to obtain a diagnosis. All 3 police officers had behaviors suggesting maladaptive personality functioning that left all 3 of them unable to function in a law enforcement capacity. There's one more thing that all 3 police officers had in common. the city sent all 3 cops to the same outside psychologist.
Dr. Ifateo Ojolade refused to speak with us. Her report shows the city supplied records critical of the officer before she ever met Lobianco. Observations by her office staff were used against him. Lobianco was described as watching other clients in the lobby as if he were evaluating them as suspects for a non-existent crime.
Were you doing that?
No,
I mean, and what does that look like?
I don't think there's a word for what that looks like.
Lobianco had to fight to see the psych report that said he needed help. We will not release a copy of the report to Officer Lobianco because of concerns that the report may be harmful to his mental health, the city attorney wrote. Lobianco was fired, unfired, then reassigned, all before he was told what the city thought was wrong with him.
It's just horrible. I mean, like, how do you do that to an officer, a decorated officer? Just cut him off.
2 veteran psychologists who evaluated Officer Lobianco cleared him to return to full duty and sharply criticized Dr. Ojolade's methods. One wrote, "The initial fitness for duty done by APD psychologists is one of the worst I have ever seen." Right after we asked city officials why they kept sending officers to an outside psychologist who is unable to form a diagnosis, Dr. Ojolade deleted her social media accounts and put up a copyright warning over her practice's website.
The effect of this kind of a ruling by a single individual is...
She destroyed my life.
If it were true, why just cast you aside? If you were shot in the line of duty, they'd be at your bedside.
Yeah.
But if they think or allege you've got a psychological issue, you're just thrown to the side, discarded.
What kind of leadership is that? What kind of person are you? That's just cruel.